So, welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. I'm Beth Atkinson, serving as worship associate today. We're a church of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your identity are all welcome here. A special welcome to visitors and newcomers. We're glad you're here. There's a preschool playroom open for young ones and activities for kids following the time for all ages. After service, join us for refreshments in the Commons, where you can find ways to get involved in the church and community. In August, we sent $1,756 to Rochester for Reproductive Freedom from our donations. Today, Today, our entire offering goes to support our monthly justice partner for September, Family Promise, whose mission is to help low-income families experiencing homelessness achieve sustainable independence through a community-based response. You can give as the plate passes or online anytime. A reminder of key dates coming up. Next week, we'll return to 2 services with our annual water communion service. You're invited to bring water to share, or we'll have some that you can pour for our communal ritual, including up to 7 words of meaning about your water source. And following the services next week, Locus Architects will present initial concept designs for our new church home, and that forum will be recorded. I'm really looking forward to seeing those plans. In 2 weeks, September 17th, we'll gather in the afternoon after services at our new location for a brief ceremony of dedication of our relationship with the land at 1:30. Details will be shared this week in the e-news, and we'll invite folks to park at Century High School and shuttle across safely. Throughout the next few weeks, visit the tables in the Commons to get connected and sign up for ways to nurture your spirit through groups and classes, and ways to help serve our community through volunteering within and beyond the church. More to come soon. Finally, a special welcome to our guest preacher, Malaya Hausnet, who is about to start her 3rd year at United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities. Before seminary, she spent 2 decades engaging stakeholders in environmental policy development and implementation. She holds a master's degree in environmental management from the Yale School of the Environment. When not studying or parenting her human and furry children, Malaya serves Unitarian Universalism as the co-chair of the Faithful Action Council at First Universalist Church of Minneapolis, and as a trustee for Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice. In a moment, the music will call us back together, but now I invite you to rise and greet those around you.
See my watch. The words for our chalice lighting this morning are adapted from Nothing Personal, James Baldwin and photographer Richard Avedon's 1964 exploration of American life and identity. For nothing is fixed, forever and forever and forever, nothing is fixed. The earth is always shifting, the light is always changing, the sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails. Lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us, and the light goes out. May this chalice be a beacon and a symbol of our covenant to comfort and to hold one another, even as the earth shifts, even as the sea rises. Now, speaking of rising, please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 1029 in the Teal hymnal, Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear.
I'd like to invite the children up. Anybody young at heart who wants to also participate is welcome to come and join me up here on the floor. All right. Welcome, welcome. So I'm going to start by a little introduction. So a couple weeks ago, the youth went on a pilgrimage to New England, and one of our stops was in West Roxbury, and we stopped at the Theodore Parker Church. And there's a big statue of the Reverend Theodore Parker there. We looked at the statue, and then we got to go into the church. We saw his writing desk and a few other little odds and ends there. Now, Theodore Parker was a famous Unitarian minister, and in 1841, so this is a long time ago, he gave a sermon called The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity. And the youth spent a fair amount of time talking about what that meant. So we're going to spend our time quickly going through that. It's not going to take us that long. But whereas the youth just had to use their imaginations of what that meant, you get props. I brought props, and it's going to get you excited, I promise. All right, so we're going to start nice and easy. I got a question for you. Do you think you can answer my question? All right. What is this? Chocolate. We got a chocolate bar. We got a candy bar. How many of you really wish I would hand this to you right now? Yeah. Thought so. So we have Exhibit A candy bar. Now, what if we did something with this candy bar? What if we put something in it? So we got just plain chocolate. Yeah, it's fine. Now, what if we put in like a puffed, crunchy rice thing? What is this now? An ice cream? Is there ice cream in there? Nope, so it's not an ice cream sandwich. Has it stopped being a candy bar? Nope, we still got a candy bar. It's still a candy bar, even though there's now something in here that wasn't in the original one. Well, let's keep going. So what if we take this, let's take the crunchy stuff out, because I'm not feeling the crunch right now. And what if we changed its shape and put in some little filler? What is this? Is this still a candy bar? Yeah, it's still a candy bar, but does this look anything like that? No, this one's flat. This one's, I don't know, a tube. Yeah, this one's a square. This one's, I don't know, rectangle. What if we took this and then added some caramel? We're getting there. We're getting closer and closer to the ideal. But are we still in candy bar? All right, we're still candy bar, even though we've now added a bunch of stuff. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a hard one. What if we then broke it into two and then put in like a hazelnut cream? Are we still in candy bar? I'm getting lots of head. We're like, yeah, and who wants this one? The bidding starts at $10. Okay, what if we took this? Because right now, so far, everything's been milk chocolate. What if we changed that to a dark chocolate and put in some coconut instead?
Oh, no. Oh,
yeah. Are we still? Oh, yeah. We're like, yes, this one's mine. Are we still in a candy bar?
Yep.
Even though the chocolate changed, even though the filling changed, we're still candy bar. All right, last one. What if we took all of that chocolate and just put it real small and then put a whole bunch of other stuff in it? Is this a candy bar? No, we're getting some head shaking. No. What would you call this? A granola bar? That's a granola bar. Jury's out if this is candy bar. So we have all of these things right here. There's our answer. We have all of these things here. We call these all candy bars, but they're all shaped different. They look different. They have different things in them. They have different chocolate in them. So this is what we mean when we're talking about what's permanent and what's transient. Permanent is that thing that makes all of these little things candy bars, whatever that is. And the transient is all of that little stuff that changes from bar to bar. And then what do we do with it if it changes so much that we'd say it stops being a candy bar? We throw it away. No. We go back to the candy bar tradition. So as we go and Rose and Joe are going to play us to class, we're going to be taking this and thinking about what keeps us permanent and what keeps us moving from thing to thing, and if all of those can be still worthwhile.
Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? Change is coming. What do we need to imagine to be prepared? I know I'm scared to be prepared. You're scared, but I know from brokenness there's hope. Yes, I know from brokenness there's hope. Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? Change is coming. What do we need to imagine to be prepared? I know I'm scared to be prepared. I know you're scared, but I know from brokenness there's hope. Yes, I know from brokenness there's hope. Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? 'Cause I know from brokenness there's hope. Yes, I know from brokenness there's hope. Yes, I know from brokenness there's hope. Yes, I know from brokenness there's hope. Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? Change is coming. What do we need to imagine?
The lyrics of A Change is Coming come from the words of Adrienne Marie Brown out of her book Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds. Change is coming, she says. What do we need to imagine to be prepared? It's an imagination exercise that she proposes we engage in to prepare for a world on the inevitable other side of unsustainable extractive capitalism. In Emergent Strategy, Brown draws heavily on science fiction writer Octavia Butler's Earthseed theology. Octavia Butler wrote, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change." At the center of this theology is not just the idea that change is the defining and ultimate power, but that we can shape change through deliberate action. Butler also said that chaos is God's most dangerous face. Amorphous, roiling, hungry. Shape chaos, shape God, act, seize change, use it, adapt, and grow. Adrienne Marie Brown points out that most of us have been socialized to understand that constant growth, violent competition, and critical mass are the ways to create change. But emergence, she says, shows us that adaptation and evolution depend more upon critical, deep, and authentic connections, a thread that can be tugged for support and resilience, the quality of connection between the nodes in the pattern. Dare I say love? And we know how to connect. We long for it. Unitarian Universalism teaches us that as part of an interconnected whole, we have the power to change that whole. In fact, we can't help but change it. If all that we touch we change, then to faithfully shape change, we must take responsibility for and bring intentionality to the ways that we change the world every day. We must be attentive to the impacts of our actions and have the courage to live as if what we choose to do is profoundly important. Without creed or canon, ours is a faith tradition that rests on our shared commitment to shape change based on a set of shared values, to transformation of the world through liberating love. Now we're going to take a few minutes to tap into our own change-shaping powers. So first, I invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze. Feel the weight of your body as it presses down on the floor, your chair, the earth. Take a moment to find the natural rhythm of your breath. Now think of a time that you shaped change, that you intentionally made a difference to a person, a place that is sacred to you, or on a decision that you impacted. Think about a time when something or someone took a different course because of your presence. And sit with that memory for a few seconds. Now take a moment to find the place in your body where you feel most moved or enlivened when you think about that experience of shaping change. What does it feel like? Taut readiness? Warmth? Is it a rising feeling, a falling feeling, a flow? Does it reach outward or inward? Is it forceful and fierce, or is it tender? Now take a moment to bask in the glow of that change-shaping power. And as you're moved and able, I want you to place your hand and put just a little bit of pressure on the part of your body that you most associated with that feeling of shaping change. And you can do that literally or metaphorically, but I want you to remember that spot so that you can find it later. Then when you've saved that spot or feeling to memory, imagine that feeling spreading outward like ripples in a pond. Imagine the light of your own power to shape change, supporting, comforting, perhaps inspiring those around you. those who are hungry and aching, perhaps your own broken heart. I invite you to speak silently or aloud the names of those people or places that you are holding in your spirit this morning, in joy or sadness, celebration or concern, and surround them with your change-shaping light. When you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes or otherwise join the group so that we may mingle our light.
Today's reading is from Reverend Dr. Natalie Maxwell Fenimore. She says that Shirley Chisholm was asked why she, a black woman, was running for president. People said, "You don't have a chance. What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" And she said, "Because I am in love with the America that does not yet exist." And that's how Unitarian Universalism is also. I'm in love with the Unitarian Universalism that does not yet exist. But I have to hold both the love for that thing and the love for the reality. It does not yet exist, but I can't deny my love for it. You know, wanting to be there is that struggle. That's why I'm fighting. We will now gratefully receive the offering.
I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. There is hurting in my family, there is sorrow in my town, there is panic all across the nation, and there is wailing the whole world round. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors the life within us, so lift me up to the light of change. May the children me up to the light of change. Give me a mighty yoke to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors the life within us. So lift me up to the light of change.
So, good morning. I'm so grateful to get to be here with you all this morning at this really special turning point in the year as we come towards the end of summer to talk about change. And in particular, this morning I want to talk a little bit about change in Unitarian Universalism. And I know that last week, as well as this morning, I guess, you were reflecting a little on the pilgrimage that some of you took to Boston, where you visited with several of our ancestors, including Theodore Parker, a few of whom I'll be invoking this morning. I grew up attending a tiny Unitarian Universalist fellowship, which makes me what I've heard called a cradle or birthright UU. Now, like many of us who are raised UU, in my 20s and early 30s, I was pretty sporadic about attending church. And like many of my middle-class, educated peers, I was decidedly transient. As I moved around the Northeast, I counted on the fact that I could find a UU church when I needed one, where I could expect to find religion without any discomforting attempts to make antiquated and, in my estimation at the time, thoroughly paternalistic stories relevant to my 21st century life. Permanence, I thought at the time, was to be found in the principles, because that's what makes us UU, right? It wasn't until my late 30s, when my first child began to form ideas of their own, that I finally joined a church. And I was surprised to find that I was the only person in my group of a dozen or so new members who had been raised as a UU. It was as an adult and church member that I came to fully understand the degree to which we are a faith movement of mostly converts and, to a very large degree, transients. Good statistics are hard to come by, but the little bit of research that does seem to have been done suggests that less than 15% of those who are raised UU remain active in the movement, and those who join one UU congregation aren't particularly likely to continue congregational participation should they move or have a change in life circumstances. I have known many comers and goers, and I bet you have too. There is far more about UU communities that is transient than is permanent. So, given this, I have been sort of surprised by the degree to which some in our congregations have formed perhaps somewhat ossified notions of what it is about our shared faith that should be seen as permanent, absolute, or essential, what it is that defines us as Unitarian Universalists. Now, perhaps you have noticed that Unitarian Universalism is at a moment in our history that is characterized by anything but permanence. After reaching a crisis point in 2017, when the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association resigned amidst accusations of racial bias in its hiring practices, we have been reckoning with the gap between our progressive ideals and reality. Our ideals of inclusion and plurality, our stated belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, in justice, equity, and compassion, and respect for the implications of deep and broad interdependence, have not always matched the reality of our interactions with one another, through which our Black, brown, trans, and disabled siblings, among others, still experience harm and exclusion in our congregations and communities. Since then, we have been asking ourselves, what is required of us? What are we individually and collectively called to do? And in some cases, give up in order to become the beloved community that we strive to be. I recognize that this is not a time when many people are looking to be unsettled in their religious community, when the world is so full of change, unknowns, and the loss of institutions we thought we could count on. And I know you all are already engaged in a few changes. You have some things going on. But I believe that we can navigate this change together, and it helps to remember that we have undergone transformation before. We talk about being a living faith tradition. We are. The words and the ideas that feel like such important anchors of shared meaning now came from people much like us, but living in other historical contexts, who chose language that they believed was relevant and meaningful at the time, given the evolving mosaic of human knowledge and human history. Lest we forget, what we refer to now as the original 6 principles were only written 64 years ago, in 1959, in the lead up to the merger of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America, when they were written into the bylaws of the newly formed Unitarian Universalist Association. And we'll come back to that later. But that was far from the first time that we overcame division as we moved through transformational change. Another 120 or so years before the merger, our Unitarian predecessors would have been unrecognizable to us today. Although they had split off from the other Congregationalists in 1825 by denying the unique divinity of Christ, they were very much still Christians. They identified as non-creedal, but they were absolutely still a biblical tradition. From within their ranks emerged a generation of clergy, young upstarts at the time, that embraced the most liberal cultural movements of their day. Those upstarts were the Transcendentalists, and while in the years since they have often been celebrated as perhaps the most influential and morally imaginative of our forebears, at the time they were marginalized and in many cases ridiculed or pushed out of Unitarian circles entirely. It's one thing to look back with the benefit of hindsight and see when the time has come for new ideas and new language to take hold. But it's never been easy to do that in the moment. And like any tradition, we can get attached to our traditions. While Ralph Waldo Emerson tends to be the most widely remembered of the Unitarian Transcendentalists, it was Theodore Parker, who is largely credited with having planted the subversive seeds that eventually overturned the soil of old guard Unitarianism and formed the new roots of an evolving movement. You probably know Parker from some of the very famous things he said later in his career as an abolitionist activist, but it was in 1841 that he broke with the Unitarian mainstream by delivering a speech titled "The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity." In it, he made the case for an absolute religious truth that was outside of historical revelation, as in the Bible, and that depended on no single teacher, act, or event. Christianity is not a system of doctrines, he claimed, but a method of attaining oneness with God. Today, we take for granted this assertion that what is most essential about our spiritual experience is intrinsic, and that it can be accessed outside of Scripture, which is itself just one source of knowledge about religious truth and the human relationship to the divine. But at the time, this was a terrible embarrassment to the Unitarian establishment, whose leaders were largely still committed to belief in biblical miracles, and who remained bulwarked against their disavowal as members of Christendom by their more orthodox peers. Parker's decision to call his fellow ministers away from very mainstream Christian ideas at the time that he regarded as idolatry, venerating the Bible and Jesus as idols, to affirm Jesus' humanity, to embrace a Christianity in which the only permanent religious truths were moral intuitions led to his being permanently ostracized by his fellow Boston Unitarians. They felt they needed to defend that which they understood at the time to be central to their shared faith. According to historian of liberal theology Gary Dorian, while Parker's neo-Christian theology was a marginal position in the Unitarian Church at the end of his life in 1860, a half-century later, it was the mainstream Unitarian perspective. American Unitarianism was transformed because what was a radical response to the social context and moral imperatives of Parker's time, abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, eventually became central to the shared understanding of how we define ourselves as a distinct religious movement. What Parker described as permanent about Christianity can be boiled down to something we have held on to: love of man, love of God. Now, we don't presume that everyone is a man anymore, thankfully, but we do still place love at the center of our shared values and theology. But I think that the attempt to capture and articulate permanence has been far less crucial to his legacy than the reminder that the words, ideas, and images that we build around whatever it is we deem essential are not and should not be intended as permanent. As Parker reminds us, and remember this was 180 years ago, he said, in respect of doctrines as well as forms, we see all is transitory. Opinions have changed most on points deemed most vital. Now, who shall tell us that the change is to stop here, that this sect or that, or even all sects united, have exhausted the river of life and received it all on their canonized urns, so that we need draw no more out of the eternal well. But in shifting the focus from scripture and doctrines to a subjective feeling of divine connection and what he called holy living, Parker opened up a new set of questions about what it is that defines us as a community of shared values and ethics, even if these are the transient concepts around which we build our institutions. As you may know, this is a critical time for Unitarian Universalism, just as it is for our imperiled democracy. Through the Article 2 Study Commission, which has a very bureaucratic name but a very, very important job, we have opened up our foundational language for the necessary updates required to meet the needs of a new generation and a new historical moment. We are rewriting the article of our bylaws in which we have codified the definition of that which we share as Unitarian Universalists, including our principles and our sources. It's what we promise to each other. This can feel threatening or alienating to those of us who found this spiritual home based on the power and appeal of those words, or, like me, whose religious identities are tied to them. But this doesn't mean we're changing what it means to be a UU. We're changing some of the words and constructs which were last meaningfully updated in 1985 and which were not intended to last more than a generation. And they already have. The new proposed values, which are available on the UUA's website, and I encourage you to check them out if you haven't had a chance to do that yet, incorporate much of the existing language that still feels most essential and relevant to UUs across a wide spectrum of beliefs and cultural values, but they also incorporate new language that intentionally brings the voices and experiences of those who have been previously at the margins of UU culture to the center. They also attempt to respond more directly to the cultural blind spots that led to the 2017 hiring crisis and the exclusion that many still feel in our communities. As a part of the Article 2 update process, Reverend Dr. Meredith Garman has talked about the idea that because we UUs are not only creedless, but more importantly, canonless, in part thanks to Theodore Parker, what defines us is our covenant and how we decide to be with each other. That's what Article 2 is. But we also need to remember that, as Reverend Dr. Susan Frederick Gray has put it, our covenants are imperfect articulations of what is universal, transcendent. It is our attempt to express that, and we learn and change. And I might add that we will continue to. This won't be the last time we update that imperfect expression, and that's why it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to sow the seeds of the past into the fertile ground of the present so that we can be a part of growing a more just and loving future. This is our chance to ask for a new time, one in which authoritarianism, white nationalism, and patriarchal control of bodily autonomy threaten our yet inadequate progress towards liberation for all. What is transient, and what do we believe is permanent about our shared faith? What's the chocolate? What are we called to promise to one another if we're going to be a beacon of hope and light to each other and the world around us in a time such as this? Theodore Parker's charge echoes across nearly 2 centuries. The question puts itself to each person, he said. Will you cling to what is perishing or embrace what is eternal? This year we get to answer this question together, and I want to acknowledge that this is not easy work. What is most permanent about our living tradition? Maybe its openness to transformation and embracing divine change itself. God is change. Regardless, it is not mine nor any of ours to determine on our own. What I do know is that our current principles and purposes were certainly not intended to be permanent, and they must adapt if they're going to be the central expression of that which defines us as a movement, not just committed to justice, but capable of advancing it in a rapidly changing world. And we do need to define ourselves. Only through knowing ourselves and defining our edges can we form meaningful relationships across difference, or recognize when we are building a more liberated and just world, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. In his 2011 book, Darkening the Doorways, Black Trailblazers, and Missed Opportunities in Unitarian Universalism, the Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed put it this starkly. There are only 2 options, change or die. Change will come whether we work for and celebrate it, or distrust and resist it, or simply wait. Our history says it will come whether we want it or not. For that, he says, we can be thankful. As Unitarian Universalists, we have often defined ourselves as a denomination and as individuals, myself very much included, by the doctrines and dogma that we negate. Right now, we are faced with the joyous opportunity to instead affirm a new purpose and values, to renew that which is transient, as well as our shared understanding of that which is permanent enough to bind us in covenant for the decades, but almost certainly not centuries to come. I hope you will join me in embracing the hard yet beloved task of renewal of our essence as Unitarian Universalists, the ever-changing expressions of our shared faith, and the ever-expanding story of who we want to collectively become. It will also be valuable practice. want to return to where we began this morning with the words of Carolyn McDade. My foot carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. We cannot help but sow the seeds of change with every footfall. So what deeper justice will we plant with our courageous choices? There is much change to be shaped so that our promise may find fulfillment, and I am grateful to be here now to shape it with each of you. Blessed be.
Try too hard to know what's to come. It'll only make you dizzy, make you ill, trigger anxiety, make you unkind to yourself. You need to be patient and kind to yourself. Once you get in the flow, play along, write the song, don't stop now, let it out, keep dancing, follow the beat and you'll see. Follow a beat and you'll see. Listen and you will find peace. When the doubts in your mind cast shadows bigger than the light in your eyes. When the storm clouds come out tonight, don't be afraid, 'cause I'm here by your side. what's to come, it'll only make